medical schools, medical school application process, etc., just do not really care about the students at all, and this just feels like another indication of that. So yesterday I came across this Reddit post on how NYU has basically stopped accepting students for their MD-PhD program and is in fact rescinding all of the acceptances that they have sent out so far. So far, I haven't seen anything official from their website. It just seems like this one Reddit post that has kind of blown up and been spread around on both Student Doctor Network, the pre-med subreddit, as well as the MD-PhD subreddit, which is where it came from originally. This Reddit post reads, got an email from NYU's MD-PhD program saying that they have paused admissions and all acceptances are now MD-only acceptances. Anybody know anything? One of the comments, which I'm going to highlight right now, reads, apparently they're restructuring the program and aren't admitting any new students to the MD-PhD program this year. Current students in the program will still be funded, but they couldn't even tell me on the phone if the MSTP program will continue after this year, let alone what the restructuring is or why this decision was made. This is the official email that NYU sent out to the accepted applicants, and this was posted on Reddit, and it reads as follows. On behalf of the NYU Grossman School of Medicine, we must share some important news regarding our MSTP program. We're planning modifications to the training of MD-PhD physician scientists that may differ significantly from traditional programs. In anticipation of these changes, we have decided to pause the admission of new MSTP students at this time. As such, we cannot offer you the MD-PhD training you seek at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine and are hereby formally withdrawing our offer of admission to the MD-PhD program. As explained below, this does not affect our offer to you of admission to the MD-only program. So this is the situation that has been outlined, and this is the email that the school has sent the applicants that have been given acceptances previously. It sounds like for the students that were accepted previously to the MD-PhD program, they will get to keep their MD program seats. The email continues to say, should you wish to keep your acceptance to NYU, we would welcome you as an MD student, etc., etc. And if the individual haven't been interviewed at all or is waiting on a decision, then that individual is assumed to have been rejected, and there are no more interviews being handed out for the MD-PhD program. So it sounds like this situation happened yesterday, at least that's when the Reddit post was originally posted. And since then, NYU hasn't said too much except a couple hours ago, they have sent out an email to all the applicants saying that they will now refund their application fees. This is the email that was sent to the applicants, and this was posted on Reddit a couple hours ago. And it reads, as you may be aware, we recently announced a pause in admissions to our MD-PhD training program as we plan modifications to the training of MD-PhD physician scientists. This decision was not made lightly, and we understand the significant impact it has on our applicants. In light of this change, we are refunding the $110 application fee to all applicants who applied for the 2024 to 2025 application cycle. We will begin processing those refunds today. I mean, at least it's good that they're refunding everyone for the application fee. I do feel like this is maybe the least they can do in this situation. From the email, it does sound like what they're doing is a program restructuring. The specific line that kind of stood out to me is, we are planning modifications to the training of MD-PhD physician scientists that may differ significantly from traditional programs. I don't really know what that means. A part of me wonders if it is program restructuring or if this may potentially be tied to their NIH funding running out this year. There's a website called NIH Reporter where you can basically look up everybody's funding situation if they're funded by the United States government. So, for example, if a professor has a grant that is being funded by an institute in the NIH, you can actually look them up. You can look up the professor's name and you can look up how much money they're being given, how long that funding goes for, as well as kind of like a synopsis of the project. And this is true as well for training programs. So for PhD programs that are funded by the NIH, you can look up how much money is being allocated to that program. So for all of the MD-PhD programs that are funded by the NIH, you can look at their T32 grant on the website. And if you look at NYU specifically, you will see that their funding is actually ending this year in 2025. And someone on Reddit pointed out, well, is this potentially tied to their T32? Like, is it that they can't get it renewed? Like, what's happening? Does this restructuring have anything to do with it? But who knows? This is just speculation. Going a little bit into my thoughts about this whole situation, I think this is a terrible, terrible look for NYU. And you will see on the Reddit post, people are commenting things like, I will never again recommend a mentee of mine to apply to this school, and all of this sort of stuff. And this kind of sentiment kind of reminds me of what happened a couple years ago with the Mayo School of Medicine, where they accidentally sent out a bunch of acceptances only to tell the students like a couple hours later or maybe a day later that they had sent those acceptances as a mistake, which again, that is crushing. Like, imagine being a student who was hoping for an acceptance. Maybe they don't have an acceptance yet, getting an acceptance, and then within a day, having that all ripped away from you. I will also say that I did not expect something like this to happen, especially given that it's NYU, and especially given that NYU is an MSTP program. Because MSTP programs are MD-PhD programs that are funded by the NIH, people, I feel like, consider them to be more stable, quote unquote. Not to mention, NYU is an incredibly established program as one of the first MSTP programs in the country alongside Albert Einstein and Northwestern. This sort of situation also kind of reminds me of something I came across a couple years ago when I myself was applying to MD-PhD programs. So at the time, I knew that the Medical College of Georgia offered an MD-PhD program, and I was interested in applying, but I realized that there was no option to select that school through the AMCAS application. And so I reached out to them actually, and they were not responding to my emails, they were not responding to my phone calls. It just feels like nobody was in that office anymore. And I come to find out they actually canceled the program entirely, so they were no longer accepting students. Editing Cindy here, and I just want to provide a little bit of a clarification. The program is actually now back. I reviewed the email I got from the person from admissions at the time and realized that it actually just said that they were pausing the program for that year. To me, a program pausing admissions for a particular cycle is less surprising if they were not an MSTP program, because the institution basically have to make sure that they have the funds to fund the student. It's like if a program was NIH funded, like part of the funds will come from the NIH. And so yes, I was like a little bit disappointed that I wasn't able to apply to that program, but I was also not necessarily super surprised. And they also didn't make this mistake of accepting students and then calling the program off entirely. My second thought about their explanation that they're restructuring the program and therefore not accepting any students this year is that program restructuring does not happen willy-nilly. Maybe I'm naive. Obviously, I haven't worked as part of a program administration. I have obviously never run a program, but in my head, something like this is not a decision that you can just make randomly. So I feel like they must have known this for a little while. So my question is why they even accepted students to begin with. My understanding of NYU's kind of medical school and MD-PhD admissions process is that it's rolling. So they accept students as they interview, and they can basically start accepting students as early as October. But there's really no need for that because I go to a school where we don't have rolling admissions and everyone's accepted in February. So basically what I don't understand is if they had any inkling of this program restructuring thing, and if they had any doubts about whether or not they could actually take students this year, why didn't they just hold off on accepting anyone until later on in the year? They definitely could have held on to those acceptances until a little bit later instead of giving out acceptances and then having to take it back. I say this because this sort of thing really screws over applicants who potentially had NYU as their number one. It's typically considered good etiquette to give up your interview spots and your acceptances early on if you knew that you were definitely not going into that school. So if you were a student who had NYU as their number one, you might be like, okay, well, I'm done. Like, I don't need to interview anymore. Let me just give this opportunity to somebody else, which is what is considered good etiquette in most situations. But if you were someone who did that and now you have your acceptances rescinded, then now you're in a bad situation where you don't know if you're going to get more interviews, if you're going to get more acceptances, etc. Another thought I have is why they couldn't have come up with the funding somehow for the students that they have already accepted. First off, NYU Medical School is already free, and it doesn't sound like they're taking that away from those students. Second, during the PhD years, it is your advisor who actually funds you. And so really, all NYU would have to do to fund these students that they've preemptively accepted is to figure out how to pay for their stipends during the medical school years, which at NYU, I believe, is shortened anyways. It's like 3 years only. Plus, MD-PhD cohorts are small. I don't think they've passed out all of their acceptances yet that they probably were planning on matriculating. And so it would only be a couple students that they would have to figure out how to fund. Honestly, I really feel for the applicants who got their acceptances rescinded. People work for years to get to this point where they're ready to apply for an MD-PhD program, and getting into a program like NYU is honestly such a big accomplishment. And sometimes I really just feel like medical schools, medical school application process, etc., just do not really care about the students at all, and this just feels like another indication of that. And sure, you can say at least they're refunding the students for their application fees, but I really think that is maybe the least they can do, and I also think that they're only doing that because people are talking about it on the internet. Another question I have coming from this situation is if this situation is tied to funding, I'm curious about the future of MD-PhD programs, especially because, we've got a new administration coming in. We don't know what's happening to the future of science funding. And if this is funding related, I think it is extremely weird for a established institution like NYU to lose a T32 funding grant. Again, I don't know if that's what's actually happening. This is just conjecture. But if that is a thing that is happening, that would be very, very weird. And if this is the result of funding getting cut, then is this kind of a sign for more science funding cutting to come? And lastly, I just want to leave you guys with a little bit of advice, given that this situation has happened. I think we all need to be a little bit more selfish, so to speak, and I just want to encourage everyone to continue going to interviews until they have at least 2 acceptances, even if that first acceptance is at your top school. And yes, it's really good etiquette to not sit on, 10, 20 interviews, but it's also okay to, interview a couple places, get a couple acceptances, and go to a couple second looks. I just highly recommend people having 2 to 3 acceptances in hand if that's at all possible before trying to give up any interviews because, this thing happened and it's unlikely, but it still happened. Anyways, that is all I have to say about this matter for now. And thank you so much for sticking around. I'm hoping to make more long form videos on YouTube. Before this, I am most active on my short form platforms, but as we know, TikTok is probably getting banned. So I am in the process of moving a lot of my short form video onto this platform, but I'm also very interested in starting to create some of these long form videos and just chat or give advice, make vlogs and studies with me's and things like that. So let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about on here. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.